Today's craft chat is about aboutness. And aboutness is something that I've really only just begun to think about in earnest, even though it's been in the teaching that I do with Linda Joy a lot and maybe forever. The definition of aboutness is that it refers to the central theme or subject matter that a particular text, discussion, or information focuses on. And so, as that pertains to memoir, I really have been loving thinking about aboutness because it's a way to harness how to think about what you include in your memoir. I think what happens a lot of times with memoir is that it's the story of your life. You're trying to narrow it down maybe to something a little bit more specific or to have a smaller lens. I mean, every once in a while, we have memoirists who need to broaden into a bigger lens, but it's much more common that people take on too much and then they're trying to narrow their scope. And so, aboutness can help you with that narrowing because it's this concept of having an idea or a theme, knowing what your book is about. On its surface, it's a super obvious idea that it refers to the central theme or subject matter of your book. But if you're not thinking about aboutness in a regular way, then what can end up happening is that your memoir can kind of run away from you. And maybe you've had that experience before of just having the sense that you have too much content. It's a bunch of scenes and it's stories, but you're trying to harness it and figure out like, what is this book and what do I want it to be? So aboutness gives you a container for that. And it just is going to help you say to yourself, my book is about fill in the blank. And so I would even encourage you to do that as an exercise. My book is about, and it could be fill in the blank and write one thing and then ask yourself again and write another thing and ask yourself again, kind of like an inquiry that brings you deeper and deeper into what the subject matter of your book is. I made a list of a few of my favorite memoirs of late, some of them classic, some of them newer, just to say to each of you what like how to think about aboutness in the context of some books that you may have read. Lately, my most recent favorite book is You Could Make This Place Beautiful by Maggie Smith. I just read it and it was a game changer for me in thinking about my own memoir. But You Can Make This Place Beautiful is about divorce, and it's about what is lost in divorce. Now, we can say it's about much more than that, but really it's a guiding principle for Maggie in terms of thinking about what scenes are included in that book. It comes down to that kind of simplicity. Wild, a classic that so many of you have read, is about grief, and it's about the things we do to work through our grief. So in her case, she walks the Pacific Crest Trail. Why? Because she's grieving the loss of her mother. And so everything is told through the lens, really, of making sense of that loss. Heavy by Kiese, Laymon, another classic and one that I love, as many of you know. Heavy is about growing up Black, and it's about what it's like to live in his body. Very specifically, if you read Heavy, you'll see how much Kiese is so much trying to be in his body as he's writing through that. And it's also about what it's like to have a domineering mother in ways that are both helpful and harmful. Educated is another book I thought about that a lot of you have read, Tara Westover. It's about growing up uneducated and then how becoming educated changes her life. And so again, that whole book, which is called Educated, is about the lens of education and how does she think about that and how does she change, even though it's about her dysfunctional family and all kinds of other things. At its center is this question of education. And then finally, I chose Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford, which is about growing up with an incarcerated parent and about the absence of a parent. So in terms of thinking about aboutness, you want to be able to identify something that short for your own memoirs. If it's too unwieldy, you don't have that container, and then you can use it as a measure. So I love this idea that each of you would have a barometer for your work. You know, you'll be able to ask yourself, does this scene pertain to what I've identified that my memoir is about? And then you have this gauge. You always have this answer. Does this belong? And if it doesn't belong, how can you finesse the scene to make it belong? Or do you simply have the measure and say, I guess this one is not quite right, it's not fitting? And so this is again like why I've been more interested in aboutness, because I think we all need to have some kind of measures along the way to be able to ask ourselves these very simple questions about the scenes. You know, each scene, does this fit? Does this belong? Do you have a container for your work? So I hope that will be helpful for you all as you're thinking about what you're doing, really getting yourself into that practice, you know, of just having that line that you can say of what your memoir is about is a great exercise. So thank you.